What makes a predator flee? What could possibly compel the most ruthless hunters of the deep, the captains of the German U-boats, to voluntarily raise the white flag with a full complement of live torpedoes aboard? In the official records of the First World War, the answer is simple: mechanical failure, mutiny, cowardice. But what if the real answer isn't buried in any archive? What if, on that day, in the leaden waters of the Irish Sea, the crew of the submarine UB-85 came face to face not with an enemy ship, but with a primal law of the abyss? And what if the only witness to this encounter, the mangled submarine itself, lying silent on the seabed, holds its tongue about the true depth of fear and how, sometimes, it stares back from the darkness? April 1918. The Great War, which had carved up the map of Europe and scarred the souls of millions, continued its bloody harvest. But here, in the leaden, choppy waters of the Irish Sea, the war had its own unique, chilling character. It was a war unseen, unheard, and unforgiving. A war where the enemy didn't charge with a battle cry, but struck from beneath the waves, from the ink-black depths, sending ships and their crews to the bottom without a witness, without a chance. And in this war, the enemy had a name, whispered in the docks of Liverpool and the wardrooms of destroyers, the U-boat. These steel wolves, these apex predators of the underwater world, were the undisputed masters of their domain. They were ghosts, shadows on the seafloor, stalking the shipping lanes for months on end, hunting their prey. Their commanders were the elite of the Kaiserlich Marine, cold-blooded, calculating, and merciless professionals. For such a commander, surrender was unthinkable. To be trapped, to take a hit and be forced to the surface, that was a risk, part of the job. But to voluntarily raise the white flag without firing a single shot, with live torpedoes in the tubes, it was beyond comprehension. It violated every rule of this underwater war. And that is precisely why the events of the morning of April 30th would be forever etched into the annals of maritime legend. On that day, the German submarine UB-85, the terror of the seas, surrendered without a fight to the British patrol sloop H, and the reason its captain would give would be so wild, so unbelievable, that no one would want to believe it. But first things first, to understand the sheer surrealism of the situation, you had to be there, on the deck of the This was no battleship or cruiser whose silhouettes inspired. The Coryopses belonged to the so-called Flower-class sloops, a series of small, none too fast but astonishingly resilient ships, built not for glory and parades, but for the dirtiest, most dangerous job on the sea. It was a clumsy but hardy watchdog, whose sole purpose was to patrol the cold waters day and night, listening to the deep, scanning the surface for the treacherous feather of a periscope. Life aboard her was an endless struggle, not so much with the Germans, but with the sea itself, with the cold and the exhaustion. The world of the Coryopses crew was composed of infinite shades of gray, a gray sky that bled into a gray, rippling sea, gray smoke from the funnel, gray steel bulkheads slick with perpetual condensation. The air was a thick, inescapable cocktail of coal smoke, machine oil, the salt-stiffened wool of wet peacoats, and cheap tobacco. Every breath was damp and cold. The dampness was everywhere. It seeped down the walls, kept the bunks perpetually moist, turned sugar into clumps and bread into a moldy sponge. The monotonous groan of the ship's hull, the eternal thrum below, routine with their salvation and their curse, waking in the raw darkness, watch duty on the open, wind-blasted bridge where sea spray froze on your eyebrows, cleaning the guns, another watch, a meager dinner of salt beef and a short fitful sleep to the accompaniment of the groaning ship. The sailors' faces were weathered and prematurely old, their hands calloused from wrestling with wet lines and icy metal. They rarely spoke of home. They spoke of the weather, of the odds of spotting a Fritz, of the quality of the rum rashi. Their main enemy was invisible. It lurked in the depths, and the only sign of its presence might be a sudden pillar of water and fire where a merchant steamer had been just a second before. Every man aboard the Coryopses, from the cabin boy to the captain, lived with this knowledge. The fear wasn't panicked, but a quiet, background hum, soaked into their skin as deeply as the sea salt. They were always waiting for the enemy from below, always, which is why, when the lookout on the bridge screamed on the morning of April 30th, his voice was filled not so much with fear as with the thrill of the hunt. Object on the surface, dead ahead. The ship instantly came alive. The alarm for action stations blared, ripping the men from their routine-induced stupor. Sailors scrambled to the guns, tearing away the canvas covers. Down to the engine room, the order was barked. Full steam ahead. Captain Brown, a short, stocky man with eyes faded from a lifetime of staring at the horizon, pressed his binoculars to his face. His heart stopped, then began to pound. It was her, no doubt about it, the distinctive, predatory silhouette of a German UB-3 type submarine. She was lying on the waves, just a couple of miles away, a perfect target. But something was wrong. The U-boat wasn't diving, it wasn't turning to line up a torpedo shot. What's more, Its narrow deck was crowded with men in dark uniforms, clinging to the railings. The captain focused the binoculars. His eyebrows shot up his forehead in astonishment. Atop the conning tower, where the main hatch was, a German officer was frantically waving something white. It looked like his own shirt. The rest of the crew had their hands raised. They were A dead silence fell over the bridge of the Coreopsis, broken only by the whistle of the wind. The gun crews froze and this couldn't be happening. It was either a brilliant, incomprehensible ruse, or something unimaginable. Captain Brown looked through the binoculars again, searching for a reason, and he found it. The steel plating on the submarine's bow was monstrously mangled. The metal was just pierced by a shell. It looked as if it had been ripped apart from the inside by colossal claws, leaving jagged, peeled-back edges. A section of the deck plating was crushed inwards. It was obvious that the ballast tanks, the very things that allowed the boat to dive, had been breached. She could no longer submerge. She was a helpless cripple on the ocean's surface. But even that didn't explain everything. It didn't explain the sheer panic on the German sailors' faces, visible even from a distance. They were looking at the approaching British ship not as an enemy, but as a savior. But the terror in their eyes wasn't for the British guns. They weren't looking at the Coreopsis, but almost through it, as if they saw something far more terrifying behind it. Something that had just come for them from the dark, icy depths. Something that had made the Kaiser's elite submariners choose the shame of captivity over another encounter with that nightmare. Captain Brown lowered his binoculars, but the image was burned onto his retinas, the torn, outward curling edges of metal. It looked nothing like the damage from a torpedo or a shell. Those left neat, if deadly, are holes. This looked like something had been chewing on the steel hull, as if a giant can opener had pried open its bow. Prepare a boarding party. Brown's voice was sharp, devoid of all emotion, a steel will cutting through the collective bewilderment. Mr. Henderson, take 6 of your best men, rifles, weapons ready, but you do not fire without my command. All other hands. Keep those Germans covered. I want our bowgun looking right down their throats. If this is a trick, we'll send them to meet their maker before they can blink. Heavy boots thumped across the deck of the sailors a minute ago, ready for a ferocious battle, now moved with the caution of hunters approaching a wounded but unpredictable beast. They lowered a boat, and with powerful strokes, it sped towards the stationary submarine. As they drew closer, the scene only grew more surreal. The faces of the German submariners were as pale as a fish's belly. There was no defiance, no hatred, not even wounded pride. Only a hollow emptiness and the aftershocks of a terror beyond words. Their eyes tracked the approaching British with a kind of desperate hope. When the first British sailor set foot on the sub's slippery deck, one of the Germans, a Boer really, flinched and nearly lost his footing. There was no resistance. They tossed their few personal weapons onto the deck with a readiness that was unsettling. The officer who had been waving his shirt climbed down from the conning tower. He was tall and lean, with fine aristocratic features that now looked as if they were carved from chalk. His uniform was soaked and stained with something dark. Captain Lieutenant Gunther Kreck, commanding officer of His Majesty's U-boat UB-8, he said in near-perfect English, his voice hoarse and cracked. We surrender. My men and I are your prisoners. Soon, Captain Kreck was standing in the cramped cabin of Captain Brown aboard the From outside came the muffled commands as British sailors transferred the German prisoners and inspected the damaged sub. The cabin smelled of damp, tobacco, and something else, the faint, cloying scent of fear that the German captain had brought with him. Brown sat at his small desk, gesturing for Kreck to take the single chair. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, sliding one toward the German. Kreck looked at the amber liquid, then at Brown, and his hands, resting on his knees, trembled visibly. He picked up the glass and drained it in a single gulp, as if it were medicine. So, Captain Lieutenant Brown began, his tone even, almost detached. I'm going to need an explanation. You are the commander of one of the most modern boats in your fleet. You had, as my men have reported, a functioning torpedo tube and a full complement of munitions. You were in a perfect position to attack, and instead, you raised the white flag. My superiors at the Admiralty are going to be very keen to know why. Mutiny, engine trouble, or have you simply lost your nerve? Kreck slowly raised his eyes. There was no shame in them, no guilt, only a bottomless, scorched exhaustion and the same raw terror Brown had seen through his binoculars. A breakdown, Captain, he answered, his voice low, but not the kind you're thinking of. He fell silent, gathering his thoughts. Twilight was thickening outside the porthole, and the dancing light of the kerosene lamp carved deep, stark shadows across the German's face. It happened at night? Last night, Kreck finally said, his voice dropping to a hush, like a man telling a ghost story around a dying fire. We'd surfaced to recharge the batteries. The night was clear, moonlit, a dead calm. The water was like a sheet of black glass. I was on the bridge with 2 watchmen. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. He paused again, his gaze lost in the past, staring through the bulkhead of the cabin. First, we heard a splash, a heavy one, like a whale breaching right alongside us. But the sound was different, heavier than the water off the starboard bow began to churn, to foam, as if a colossal propeller was working just beneath the surface. And then it appeared. Brown pressed, his brows knitting together. Craig nodded, his eyes fixed on a single point. I don't know how to describe it, Captain. It was no animal I've ever known. It was enormous. A head rose from the water, strangely shaped, flat, with no ears. And the eyes, my God, the eyes. They were large, bulging, and they glowed in the moonlight with a faint, phosphorescent fire of their own. And then it opened its maw, and we saw the teeth, long needle-thin. They glistened like shards of glass. A silence fell, broken only by the creak of the ship's timbers. Brown stared at the German captain, his mind racing. Was the man delirious? Was this an elaborate lie to cover his cowardice? Or had the crushing pressure of the undersea war finally cracked his mind? But Craig continued, and his voice rang with such genuine conviction that a cold dread trickled down Brown's spine. It didn't just watch, it attacked. With impossible speed, it lunged for the bow of our boat. I heard a hideous shriek of metal as it hauled itself onto the deck. The U-boat listed under its weight. It was heavy, Captain, unimaginably heavy. My men on the bridge screamed. I gave the order to open fire. Sailors scrambled out of the hatch with rifles. I drew my We shot at it. The bullets ricocheted off its dark, glistening hide as if they were pebbles. It didn't even seem to notice, it just tore into our boat. From the dark depths of World War I, a chilling tale unfolds. A monstrous beast, lurking below the waves, preying on unsuspecting vessels. Join me as I take you on a journey to the eerie depths of the ocean where sailors once encountered a horrifying creature that defied all imagination. The year is 1917, and the Atlantic Ocean is a battleground. For 4 long years, German U-boats have been silently stalking the seas, hunting down Allied shipping and sowing terror among the hearts of sailors. But the waters hold a darker secret, a sinister presence that haunts the depths and preys on both friend and foe alike. Our story begins with the encounter between British naval forces and a captured German submarine. Among the prisoners aboard are German naval officers, including the stern and disciplined crew, along with an enigmatic captain named Brown. As they navigate the treacherous waters, an ominous calm descends upon the sea. Suddenly a colossal shape emerges from the depths, sending shockwaves through the vessel. With a sickening crunch, it collides with a ship, causing chaos and destruction. Fear grips the men as they witness the aftermath. The mighty submarine has been ripped apart, its fate sealed by the jaws of the lurking horror. With the threat seemingly neutralized, the sailors set about repairing the damage. But as the night wears on, the sea grows restless once again. A low, guttural roar echoes through the darkness, sending shivers down their spines. Once again, the colossal shape re-emerges, its eyes fixed on the remaining vessels. Pandemonium ensues as the sailors desperately try to defend themselves. Amidst the turmoil, Captain Brown and Craig find themselves locked in a desperate struggle to survive. They are confronted with a choice: surrender their vessel and crew to the monstrous predator or face certain destruction. Torn between duty and self-preservation, they make a fateful decision. As the story reaches its climax, the men brace for impact. But instead of the expected attack, the monster abruptly vanishes into the murky depths. In the aftermath, they are left shaken and traumatized, forever changed by their encounter with the lurking horror. Now let's delve deeper into the gripping narrative that unfolded on that fateful day. As the men gathered on the fantail, their eyes were drawn to the damaged submarine. UB-85 lay before them, a grim testament to the horrors they had witnessed. The sight of the mangled metal sent a chill down their spines, a haunting reminder of the lurking danger that still remained. Amidst the eerie silence, Captain Brown turned to the prisoners and delivered a chilling ultimatum. The choice was clear: cooperate or face the wrath of the lurking horror. As the men looked on in suspense, Captain Brown took charge. With firm determination, he ordered the submarine to be scuttled, sealing its fate in the icy depths. The decision was swift and decisive. As the charges were set in place, a somber mood settled over the crew. The order to abandon ship was given, and the sailors prepared to leave the doomed vessel. With heavy hearts, they knew that some might not return. In the final moments aboard the submarine, the men grappled with their fate. Some prayed for mercy, while others cursed their luck. The atmosphere was thick with tension and despair as they awaited the inevitable. The scuttling charges were detonated, sending a massive explosion that shook the very foundations of the submarine. Water rushed in, sealing the fate of UB-85. The vessel began to sink, plunging into the dark depths. As the submarine disappeared beneath the waves, the sailors watched in awe and terror. The murky water hid the mangled remains of UB-85, leaving behind a haunting mystery. The exact fate of the submarine and its secrets remained unknown, lost to the depths. And so the tale of the lurking horror serves as a chilling reminder of the mysteries that lie beneath the ocean's surface. Hey guys, thanks for joining me on this journey into the depths of maritime mystery. If you enjoyed this terrifying tale, don't forget to stay tuned for more spine-chilling stories. And if you've ever had a close call with something unexplained on the high seas, Share your story in the comments below. Who knows? You might just be the next contributor to our chilling series. Until then, keep an eye on the horizon and beware of the lurking horrors that may be hiding just beneath the waves. Thanks for watching. Stay safe and see you in the next video. Imagine yourself standing on the deck of a ship in the midst of a stormy North Sea. You are surrounded by darkness and crashing waves. In the distance, you see a strange glow. At first you think it's a lighthouse or maybe an incoming ship, but as it gets closer, you realize that it's actually coming from a submarine that has surfaced right beside your vessel. Startled, you watch as a crew of Germans climbs out of the hatch. They look haggard and terrified. The submarine's captain rushes to your ship and shouts for help. But as the wind whips his words away, you hear something strange. You hear him say that his submarine was attacked by a creature from hell, a shark with eyes like burning embers and rows upon rows of razor-sharp teeth. Crazy, right? Well, believe it or not, this exact scene played out more than 100 years ago. But the difference is that it's not just the captain's words that make this story unique. It's also the fact that the creature he described was real, and it was witnessed not only by the crew of the submarine, but also by the men on the nearby ship. So what was this creature from hell? Let's take a look. In the beginning, we need to go back to 1917. When war was raging between Germany and Britain. The conflict had been ongoing for 3 years, and both sides were desperate for a way to get the upper hand. Germany needed supplies and Great Britain needed to stop them from getting them. At this point, submarines had become the weapon of choice. They were fast, deadly, and could travel relatively undetected. As such, German U-boats prowled the North Sea hunting down supply ships while trying to avoid the British Navy. One of these submarines was the UB-85. It was a small vessel, just 45 meters long, but incredibly powerful for its size. Under the command of Captain Lieutenant Kreck, the UB-85 was well trained and highly successful, but the crew didn't know it at the time. Their success was about to come to an end. It was April 1918 when the UB-85 was sailing north from Belgium. The mission was simple: deliver cargo to a hidden port in Scotland. The crew completed the journey without incident, but when they surfaced in the dark waters near their destination, they noticed a British ship nearby. The men on the UB-85 panicked. They knew they couldn't outrun the larger vessel, so they tried to escape, but it was too late. Soon enough, the British ship had closed in on them. The crew of the UB-85 had no choice but to surrender. As the crew of the British ship approached the UB-85, they saw something shocking. The men on the German submarine weren't holding weapons or making any effort to fight back. They were clearly terrified of something, or rather someone. As the crews exchanged uneasy glances, a figure emerged from the darkness. It was the captain of the UB-85. He rushed to the other ship and shouted for help, explaining that his submarine had been attacked by a monster, a shark with eyes like hot coals and teeth like shards of glass. His words were cut off by the wind, but the fear in his eyes was clear for all to see. Despite his pleas, the British captain ordered his crew to arrest the Germans and bring them aboard. The rest of the UB-85's crew protested, claiming that they had to warn the British about the creature. But it was too late. As the sun began to rise, the British discovered that the German captain had told the truth. Their ship was being attacked by a shark. That was unlike anything they had ever seen before. To understand what happened next, let's take a step back and look at sharks. These creatures have been on Earth for millions of years. They come in all shapes and sizes and are found in all of the world's oceans. Sharks are known for their predatory nature and their ability to sense danger. They have a sixth sense that allows them to detect even the smallest changes in their environment. This makes them incredibly effective hunters. And it also means that they can sense fear. Fear is an incredibly powerful emotion, and when a shark detects it, it will investigate. Sometimes this can be harmless, but other times it can be deadly. Sharks have been known to attack boats and even humans, and in some cases, so imagine being on a ship in the middle of the ocean and suddenly a massive shark begins circling. You can feel the vibrations of its movements through the hull of the boat. Its presence is like a dark cloud hanging over you. Then it strikes. The shark crashes against the side of the ship, its teeth tearing through the wood like it's nothing but paper. Fragments of the ship's side are thrown into the air as the shark continues to gnaw on the boat. You can hear the screams of those who have fallen into the water, their life quickly ebbing away as the shark feasts on their flesh. The remaining crew members cling to the ship for their dear lives, desperately trying to stay afloat, but the shark is relentless. It continues to attack until the ship is destroyed and everyone on board is dead. This might sound like a terrifying nightmare, but it's exactly what happened to the crew of the UB-85. But wait, there's more. The shark wasn't alone. It was accompanied by a pod of killer whales. Yes, killer whales. These intelligent creatures are known for their grace and speed. They're also known for their predatory nature. Killer whales are highly skilled hunters. They work together in pods to trap their prey and then devour it. Now imagine being trapped in a cage with these vicious creatures. They circle you, their eyes fixed on you. They begin to attack, ramming the cage with their powerful bodies, biting with their sharp teeth, smashing and crushing until it gives way. You're now in the open ocean with only the clothes on your back. The killer whales don't waste any time. They quickly surround you and drag you down into the depths. As you struggle to stay afloat, you can see the shark circling nearby. It watches intently, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Before you know it, the killer whales have brought you close enough to the shark and they release you. It lunges and you feel its teeth tearing into your body. Your blood fills the water, attracting even more sharks. Before long, your body is nothing but a mangled mess. Now, unfortunately, there's no record of what happened to the British crew. We can only imagine how horrific their deaths must have been. This terrifying encounter was recorded in the official log of the British Admiralty. It tells the story of how the shark and killer whale pod hunted down the UB-85, tore it apart and devoured the crew. The survivors managed to escape, but they were never the same again. They suffered from nightmares and anxiety for the rest of their lives, but the story doesn't end there. After the incident, the survivors tried to warn other ships about the shark, but no one listened. They continued to sail into the dangerous waters and many of them never came back. The shark and killer whale pod continued to roam the seas, preying on anyone who dared to enter their territory. Over time, the stories of the shark faded into legend, but some say that it still lives on, waiting for its next victim. If you've made it this far, you're probably wondering why no one has ever found any evidence of this creature. After all, if it's been around for millions of years, shouldn't there be fossils or something? Well, it's not that simple. Creatures like this likely evolved separately in different parts of the world, and since they haven't left behind any fossil evidence, we can't be sure they ever existed. However, just because we can't prove they existed doesn't mean they didn't. It is possible that these creatures lived in the darkest depths of the ocean where there is little to no light and no oxygen. This makes it difficult for us to study them or even find their remains. Another reason why we haven't found any evidence of this creature is that it may have gone extinct. If these creatures lived in the depths of the ocean, they were likely wiped out when humans began to pollute the waters. The ocean is full of mysterious creatures that we don't know much about. There are entire ecosystems that we've yet to explore, so it is possible that this creature or something similar still lives on in the depths of the ocean. Maybe it's just hiding from us. I know this story was scary, but it's important to remember that most sharks and killer whales aren't like this. They play an important role in our ecosystem and should be respected. They're truly amazing creatures. Just remember to stay away from them if you ever see one. So what do you think? Do you believe this story? Let me know in the comments below. Also, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.